and that leads us into the next speech session for today, the presentation.
Who is that?
It's actually Marcus Uhlin that will present this, and we will try to connect to him. So if you do that, he has a presentation about PowerShell and automate your day. So
okay, and this is the good-looking guy that I've seen before.
Yeah,
I mean, compared to.
Yeah, try to maximize his. Hello, Marcus.
Hello, hello.
So glad to have you with us. So tell us a little bit about yourself to start.
Yeah, I do PowerShell all the day now on, and upKeeper is one of the products I work with, PowerShell, and the thing about PowerShell is that it's as soon as you get hang of it, it's so easy to just do the things you want without the limitations of the systems you work with. So you can always extend the functionality of systems with the use of PowerShell in an easy way.
Yeah.
As I think then.
As a leading question then, is upKeeper a good system to extend with PowerShell?
Yeah. It's the REST API is very easy to use. So I hope I can show that today, and hopefully someone of you out there will try this out and see that it ain't that hard to get started.
Great. So let's go. Let's jump into your presentation, your stuff.
Okay. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is just to get on connection with the upKeeper API. So the only thing you need to remember is to Google upKeeper PowerShell API.
You seem to have Googled it before.
Yeah, I have.
All the time.
That's how I learned it.
Yeah.
And so, here you can see a hit with work with PowerShell in upKeeper. And it's Roger who has put up this FAQ. So we're gonna try this out. So, and the code you see here doesn't do anything with your environment, so it's totally safe to try it out. So let's have a look at that.
Yes, a small thing, Marcus. Could you minimize the small window to the right? That one. Thank you.
So I have my demo environment, and I have the same text you see in the FAQ here in my PowerShell ESE. When you work with PowerShell, I would recommend to get started by instead of using the PowerShell console, you use you have it on all the computers and servers. So just type SCE in the search and you get the PowerShell ISE, hard to pronounce. I have some, now I've got the taskbar here. Okay, so without explaining all the stuff we do here, when you run in this utility, you can, if you select a part, you can always choose run selection. So, or use F8 to run it. So what we first need to do, we need to get our credential to our account, our API user. And then we have filled this variable with the credentials. We create a login body for our REST command. And we can skip this part and just create a session. This will work for you also. The only thing you need to do is to update the URL to your API URL. If you have multiple organizations, you will get a dialog choosing the correct organization to work with. And I have done some stuff that will make things easier. So when we work with REST in PowerShell, we use the commandlet invoke REST method. And in the parameters we need to specify is the method, the URL, header, and content type. So, but in this example, I have put in some default parameter values. So we actually don't need headers and content type for every invoke REST method we do. So instead, it will provide that. If it isn't available in the command line, it will provide it from our default values. So to get all the computer names in my organization, I just run the API, the REST API to get all the computer names. We don't get the response here is only the computer ID and the computer name. We will soon see that we will get some more information by.
So the big advantage with this kind of you're building the header, you're building the connection values and so on, is that you don't have to do it every time you do a request to the API, right?
Exactly, and as I have put out this, if we have a look at that, the API help, that this is available on your API URLs. So the API URL / help, you will get to the help page for all the calls you can do against the API. And as you see, if I want to get computer details, I just type details. I got a lot of hits, but let's see. I'll cheat here. Okay, so I put out in here in the comment, as you see, what we need to do based on the API help to get the computer details. So we need the API URL, we need the organization number. Under computer details, we need to provide the computer ID. Let's have a look at this. Okay, so this is a pretty simple request. So we only need to provide it as it says here. There's no need of a body with additional information. So if I pick out one of these computers, to do that, I use the commandlet out grid view. I have this variable with all the computers, and now I want to select one. So if I run the out grid view, I will get a dialog with the value where I can multi-select, even copy-paste the values. If I use the pass-through parameters, it will return my selection. So by running this line and choosing computer I'm on, I have now selected just my computer demo domain controller 1. To make things easier, I specify another variable with the computer ID, where I have where I've only grabbed the key without any additional properties. So now I have my variable with the computer ID. Okay, so back to the API help. What I needed was the API URL, organization number, where I've stored it in this variable. Under computer details, I enter computer ID. So let's look at the result. And here I can see most of the information except software inventory and hardware inventory regarding computers. It's a sub-property called client information that contains additional values. Here I can find last login user, for example. Okay, so that's how you pull information about one computer regarding computer detail. I can continue and pull the hardware inventory about the computer. And to have a easier look at that, I can use the out grid view. And then I see the most recent hardware inventory regarding this computer. If I would like to, the way things is organized is by section and property name, and the string and the information is stored in string value. So if I would like to, for example, get the model of this computer, I can filter out with the where object commandlet that section should be equal system and property name equal model. And what I then do is just to expand the string value. Then I get the computer model, which is a virtual machine. Can run this line, see that I can grab, for example, that its manufacturer is Microsoft and computer OS is Windows Server 2019. I can pretty much do the same with software inventory. And as you see, I provided you API URL, organization number. On the computers, I can provide computer ID and then software inventory. And we can have a look at that. So here I can find, for example, Google Chrome version. This is not very useful if we just run it for one computer. upKeeper has a really nice interface, so we actually don't need to do stuff like this. But we can do it on many computers all at once. So, for example, if we would like to get the computer details of many computers, we need to use the for each loop. So there are two different ways of doing that in PowerShell. Actually, it's more than two, but this is the classical one. So we have all our computers, and we want to do a for each loop for every object in this array. And when you define a for each loop, you can pretty much name the variable that would represent every object in the array to whatever you want. In this case, I named it com object, but I can name it dirt if I want to. So I create an array, and for each object, I run the same method as I did with the individual computer and add it to my array. So now I grab the computer details of every computer objects in my organization, and they are now stored in this array. If we will have a look at this, it will look something like this. So I will have one row for every, actually they are gathered. I have one line for every object, computer object. An easier way to do that with a one-liner is to use this. This is the same as previous, but I pipe the values from all computers into for each object commandlet. So I'm pretty much doing the same. I run a for each loop for every object and grab and add all these all the result into the same array. So this pretty much gives the same result. And of course, you can also do this with the hardware inventory. So we can grab the hardware inventory of every computer and see for examples. Then I can filter out some information here. Here I want to know all the operating system versions. I have grouped them. Now it's a bit boring because every computer in this organization has the same version number of Windows. But here is one thing that maybe someone could find a use of. I want to know the free disk space of every computer in my organization. And that's found in the section logical disk property free space. But it's presented in bytes. So I use an expression that I divided by 1 gigabyte in my presentation of the information. And pretty much the same can we do, for example, with software inventory. So for example, if you want to know all the Google Chrome versions you have in your organization, it's possible to do that. Now I didn't have any good examples in this demo environment, but let's see, I don't even know. Yeah, here I have all the applications and I can sort them on the occurrence of the application. So let's have a look at Silverlight, and I can then see all the computers that are Silverlight and all their versions of the Silverlight. This would be much more fun if you have like Google Chrome version, or if you want to know how know and act on software versions that is obsolete. You can easily get that with the API. Of course, you can also do the export to CSV. And this one demands a bit more in the REST method. You need to build a body of all the computers you want to include in the response of the CSV export. So let's say, and for that I pipe all my computers' IDs into a commandlet that converts it to the JSON format that we need. And this is the body I then will include in my REST method. To handle the encoding of the response, I actually put this, in this case, in a temporary file, and then import it as a CSV. So here we have the same result as we get from the CSV export we do by the web interface. And then we can later on export it with the export CSV commandlet in PowerShell. Okay, so that's some basics, but now I want to show you how you can figure out in another way how to do stuff you do in the web interface. So let's say if you create a group and want to know what is happening, you can, if you're running Google Chrome, you can press F12, go to network, mark XHR, and start recording. Now it's recording. So here you see all the REST responses the upKeeper web does. So if I want to test creating a group and see what kinds of method it uses, I can just do a test. Click save. Okay, so what is happening is, as we see here, here I can find then that the request URL was the API URL, organization number, and group. I can see that it uses what application header it uses, and further down I can see the payload. So here in the payload you can also then click view source and view parsed. So if you view source, you see exactly in the same format, as we will see when I do this in PowerShell. We also get the response, and the response we get from the request is the ID of the group. So let's create this, the same kind of body that is we saw in the payload. And then we run it to convert to JSON. So let's have a look at it. So as we see, we get the same format. And to create a new group, we use the help. We use the exactly same URL as we saw in the Chrome with the body. Now I'm created a group. Here was the random group created. There ain't any members yet. So let's do that. And here will choose a couple of computers to add to my group. Let's see if they were added. Okay, so that works. And also I can do the same by removing member, I thought. Oh, let's skip that one. Now I want to show you some stuff. The thing about PowerShell is that what I'm trying to often do is to minimize the amount of administration that we do. If you need to type some information to a system, type it only once and get use of that information. So many of us both type information in AD and we type information in upKeeper. So I want to show you an example of how we can make use of the information we have in upKeeper and get additional information from our Active Directory and then put it back in upKeeper. So we are providing the AD with some information and the AD providing us with some other information to upKeeper. So what I'm going to do, I'm just gonna, in this environment, I don't have these computers aren't AD connected, so I will create those computer objects. Not very useful, I think, but so I will just skip the explanation of this part, but I will, for each computer that won't exist in the AD, I will create it. Let's have a quick look at that. And then we see I just created these computers, and I took with me the description of the computers from upKeeper. I also made use of the description that was stored in the last logon user. So upKeeper provided me the last logon user. So I put that, I made a lookup from my AD of that username and put that user as managed by on the computer object. Keep that in mind when I do the next part. So how can we make use of that managed by attribute? We often type in some information in the description, attribute an AD about who owns the computer, but the manage by attribute is a link to another object in AD. So you only, by one link, you know for sure which other object that is the owner, the user of the computer. So I will just create an array here without explanation of, based on the manage by attribute, I will then grab some extra information from my AD regarding, for each computer, I then grab the display name, the mail address, the city, office title, and department from each user from the manage by, the link provided by the manage by attribute. And I can also see last logon, but unfortunately, the computer or the user haven't logged on any of these computers yet. But this provides me some information that the upKeeper environment doesn't have about these computers. So let's update those objects in upKeeper with that information. So I run a for each loop of my array that I created based on the manage by attribute. I grab the computer ID, I grab the computer details, and I update the computer details of each computer. So I will walk this through a bit slower than earlier. So for each object in my combined array, that was the array with the city and mail and title and department of each of the computers. I then put each object in the AD computer variable. I get the computer ID for each computer. I get the computer details. As we saw earlier. I then update the computer details, and that's not harder than we put a dot and we choose which property we want to update. Let's say we want to update primary DNS, and then we just type it in. So here I will update the computer object's location field with a combination of some data from the AD. So I have the AD computer display name. I have the title of that person. And I have the department of the person. I also want to know when the computer object was created. That could be useful if you want to find old computers, or if the support team want to know how old is the computer on the user that is calling us. And I convert that to a JSON body. And use the REST method to update computer details. Okay, so let's run this all at once. Okay, so what did I get then? If I look at my devices, stop the recording there. And if we look at the upKeeper UPK 005, we now get that this user is Brittany, who is manager of finance and accounting. We also, under the advanced tab, we can see when this computer was created. Oh, sorry. When the computer was recorded last logon in AD, and when the user was last logon. So this can help your support team to just get a quick view of the computer when they get a support case of a certain user. Of course, you can provide any type of information this way. This is just an example. So I have a lot more to show you, but maybe do we have any questions? So.
Time is limited. I actually had a question. What you see benefits? What benefits PowerShell have over reports? I think you quite have answered that question. You can use the data in another way. You can put it in upKeeper, you can put it in AD and so on. So that's
exactly. So I'm not a fan of using PowerShell just to use PowerShell. I use it when I see a benefit of pulling information from one place and making use of it in another place. So if you find some limitations in, for example, upKeeper, and you know the information is there, then you should think about using PowerShell. It's not that hard, but we have this 2-day course, and then we go way slower than this, and we will get through the basics of every command and the structure of PowerShell and how to work with it. So, and on the second day, we will work a whole day with different kinds of methods to use and different examples of how to make upKeeper more dynamic.
It was actually my second question. For a new user, this is a lot of code, it's a lot of rows you showed us and so on. So in these courses, do you start from the beginning and type everything, or do you copy stuff, or how is the
we
course?
Start from the actually from the very basics of what is an array, what is a string object, how do we modify, merge, split data, and so on. So how can we, the data that you get isn't always how you want it. So one thing you first need to learn is how to handle data, how to handle text, and how to handle arrays. So we start by going through the basics. And later on, when you know the basics, you see that the structure of PowerShell is so intuitive that the basics is following you through all through the most simple commands to the more advanced functions you're building.
Okay, we will switch over and see if there are any questions. Well, I couldn't see any questions right away.
Some wishes.
Some wishes, yes. There were some wishes for upKeeper to implement and be even better at handling PowerShell requests and so on. There are always, and that's great. Great to have a tool, a system where you can develop all the time. So I think
This is the future.
This is the future. It's a great way to automate your environment, both when it comes to upKeeper, but also the AD and so on, and other system and programs as well. Have you used PowerShell in other systems, Marcus?
Too many to count. But you can one thing most people don't know, if you have the whole .NET framework to work with. So if you can do it in C#, you can do it in PowerShell. So if you find the method or class written in C#, you just Yeah, you convert how you write it in PowerShell. So yeah, no limitations, I would say.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Marcus. If there are any questions later on, we'll take them with you. We'll send them to you, and we will answer them. Thank you so much, Marcus.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So, great. Did you learn anything?
Can I clarify one thing?
Yes.
If I look stupefied and not knowing what's happening, it's because you have the ears and I only see what's happening.
Yeah.
So
that's correct.
But I understand. This is the future. We have to not only automate and make a factory out of it. So we want to be also hantverkare. What's that? Craftsman.
Yeah.
Women.
Yeah.
To be able to design the factory where we actually automate. But so it's a little bit of both. But definitely this is something that we need to...
You have to build all those scripts and so on. So that are quite a craft as well.
Yes.
And Marcus has been doing that for years. So, but it's great to see what you can do. It's great to see that upKeeper can be one of the systems you are using, of course. So this ends this session. The next session, and we will go at 4 o'clock to the summary and voting session.
So we started it with upKeeper today, and we'll end with the summary and voting, which is the most important part for you guys to participate in.
Yes, absolutely. And we have some requests from the backstage crew. They will remove the today and trend notes, move them aside, maybe remove them as well. Everything will be saved, so no worries there. They will make room for the next sticky notes. So no worries. There will be some movement again, and there will be maybe some deleting as well. But everything is saved, so no worries. The sticky notes were with next items, something that you want to be implemented in upKeeper in the future, will be left at the board.
Correct.
So that's
it. We
will be back at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. New tie.
New tie.
New shirt.
Maybe some new paintings as well. Remember to have something to drink, something to eat, because we're going to the
voting session.
To the last session for the day, the most important, as you said. So meet you there.
Hang on.